over a lot of the basics of Reshade today. I'll try to answer as many questions as possible. Something to keep in mind is there are a lot of shaders to use, so I will not be able to go to over every single one, but I am gonna try to teach kind of the basic functions of each one, so you can kind of differentiate which ones you might want to use and which ones you wouldn't. So first thing we'll go over is installation. I just want to make sure. Are y'all seeing the web page for Reshade? A
Yes.
refund. I will give you your $0 refund. Okay, so you'll find Reshade download on their web page. Um, if you have Otis Cam or any of the purchased Marty mods, you will want full add-on support. If you do not plan on using Otis, you do not need the full add-on support, but I always get the one with add-on since I use Otis. Um, from there, it will give you a downloader, and you start like that like you would installing any program. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because I already have it installed, but you would pick, most people are going to be using DX11. If you are not using DX11, you want to pick the other one because that will be Vulkan. You go through DirectX. I'm going to stop here because I don't want to affect the game that I already have open, but it's going to give you a bunch of shaders that it will pull up. You can just install everything. It's not going to affect much if you have a bunch of extras, um, especially because it's a pain in the ass to go through and try to pick out the ones you do and do not want. So the first page will show you all of the shaders. You can install all of those, and then the next one will be all of the add-ons. I usually just add Otis, um, and just because I don't use any of the other ones. I think I recently updated mine to include the Marty's mods. There aren't a ton of add-ons, so you can just go and pick the couple that you need and then finish the install. Once you finish installing and load the game, it will bring up um, a loader at the top of the screen when you open the game. And to open it, your default key is going to be the home key. And anytime you've installed it for the first time, it will encourage you to do a tutorial. Even with what I'm going over, I highly recommend using the tutorial just so you get a better idea of how everything's laid out. Um, with Reshade, you have home, add-ons, settings, statistic, log, and about. Homes and add-ons are going to be the most used tabs. Settings, one of the first thing I recommend is going through and setting up where your screenshots are saving and what key that you use. I use the print key because I hate myself, and don't mind having to exit out of the clipping thing from Windows every single time. But pick something that works best for you, and then a path. I have a folder specifically for all of my BG3 screenshots, and they get sent directly to that folder every single time. I can, but I'm lazy. And last time I tried to disable it, it gave me a hard time. So I just exit out of it every time. It's dumb. Um, so you can also pick the name and the type of format. I always recommend PNG. It's usually the most recommended for not losing any sort of data when you edit it. Um, and then a bunch of other stuff if you want to mess with that. I usually don't need to. Um, from here, you're going to have all of the shaders in this main tab under the Reshade preset. Um, all of the shaders are going to fall into about three kind of loosely overlapping categories: things that let you edit the way that the picture is looking in front of you, almost like an editing program. Something that creates an effect, almost like an Instagram effect or a mask, and then things that are functional, like a free shot. So, learning the differences between those are going to help you figure out what you need and how to use them the most. The first ones, editing, I find are going to be things like the Prod 80 contrast brightness saturation or the color temperature. These are going to let you adjust pretty basic things: exposure, contrast, brightness. Um, so if you don't get something looking the way you want to with like Lighty Light, you can do tiny little tweaks. I prefer doing this here in Reshade versus having to take it to a completely different program and edit it after the fact. So that's why I like using these. Something that's going to be an effect is going to be like um, the blooms. Blooms are going to give a kind of hazy, blown out effect, similar to a blur, but not quite. It's going to be more light driven. So stuff like that, depth darkness, uh, fog, tint, all of these are going to be effects that you can add to make your picture look different. And then functional ones are going to be like free shot, where if you are hot sampling in a different size, you can easily see your picture um, on the screen at a small distance, if that makes sense. Any questions about like the overview that I've presented so far? Nothing? Okay. So I want to go over a couple that I use the most often and how they affect my pictures and why I pick them. Um, the first one is going to be the free ambient occlusion from Marty's Mods. This one I think is great because if you use the basic ambient occlusion that comes with the game, um, it's going to add weird shadows when you get close up to stuff. So I already have it added, but you can see all of the little shadows around things that are added as soon as I click it. I keep this on all the time. You don't have to, but I keep this on all the time because I happen to like it quite a bit. Sharpen is going to be pretty much on what it says. It's going to bring up the texture detail of things. This is really good if you use Otis, because it tends to blur things quite a bit. I'd say even over blur quite a bit because of the way that it does depth. So this is a really good thing for balancing it out. Monocular cues is very similar to the ambient occlusion, but I say it adds a little bit more blackness around things versus just shadows and can let things really pop in the foreground. Um, so I like that a bit, especially if I'm trying to bring characters away from the background a bit and have them pop more. Film grain is good. I don't use this one as much because I have a medical condition that gives me film grain in my eyes and it's hard to see. But this is really good if you want um, something that's going to look more like a real picture or give it an older film feel. That's really good, especially if you bring it up a lot. It's going to give it that older feel and less crisp. Ambient light is kind of a light effect that is very warm. it usually is going to be coming off of other light sources and kind of give that pinkish tone to everything. You can definitely um, can all these shaders be used at default?
So like the
They can
sliders.
definitely, yeah, the sliders, you can definitely use them as they stand or tailor them to how you like. And that's one of the reasons why I like using individual shaders as opposed to creating as opposed to using other people's um, pre-made ones because it lets me uh, change everything on the fly. Um, sorry. So one of the things, especially with ambient light, you can see that all of I've actually affected some of these already. So let me make sure all of these are done to default. Yeah. So I had actually pulled that down for another picture. So if you wanted to, you can make things a lot heavier or a lot less.
Okay.
And so most of these shaders are going to have ways to tweak them, which is great. Um, if you want more bloom, less bloom, more light, less light, that's going to help quite a bit. All right, my throat is killing me today, apparently. So that is the beauty of doing individual shaders, um, is that you can tweak all of these to make your picture look exactly how you like. This I think this Xenon Bloom is going to be the best free one in my opinion. I think it gives good I think blurriness without being too much. And this one, of course, like everything else, you can affect, you can change how much the bloom is. You can also, and a lot of these are going to have really specific um, points that you can play around with. And some of them I'd recommend just looking up that specific term if you're confused about it. Like dirt intensity, I'm pretty sure is um, like similar to graininess. Um, but it's for different shaders that their terms are going to change. That's why I'm not going through every single one because all of them have different terms. Um, but usually, if you're looking at intensity or overall, those are going to be the ones that change the all of the settings at once. So bloom intensity is usually going to be like the entirety of the bloom. Same with ambient light, uh, all intensity, that's going to do the entire thing. Um, so that again, a lot of these you kind of just have to play around with and see how you like it. But luckily, all of them should have the return to default. So if you don't like it, you can just start over. Something also to keep in mind as we're going through this, you have the ability to save your settings on these. I have autosave on because for some reason when I hot sample, it likes to kick off all of my settings and reset everything. So I keep autosave on. But you can Marty's mods. So the pro ones are going to be on Patreon. Um, but the immerse ones, the basic ones, come with Reshade for free. So ambient occlusion, I think sharpen might have been a basic one too. It's hard to remember which ones are basic now that I have all the new ones. Um, but yeah, the more complicated ones from the pro line are going to be paid. Yeah. So I think the sharpen the immerse one is free. But yeah, so you can save your settings if you decide that you really like it. You can either save it to your main preset, or you can create a new preset. And so by clicking that plus sign, you can go in and create a um, your own preset. Like I have one that's specifically for when I'm taking pictures of um, like clothing because I'm doing a like fashion compendium for the BT3 clothing. I have all of this so that anytime I go in to take that particular kind of picture, I can just click on this instead of having to redo this every single time. So it's very useful being able to do that. And then, of course, you can also get other people's Reshade presets. That can be fun if you are a beginner and you don't want to think about other stuff like that and you just want like a preset. There can be some really good ones. For this, it's always, especially if you're going to be using other people's resets, it's always recommended to get all of the presets or all of the shaders in your initial download. Um, so you're not missing anything like apparently I am. I don't remember taking anything off, but um, typically it's recommended that you do all of them just in case you're using somebody else's presets. So back to my original one. Um, so I know we also wanted to go over specifically depth darkness. Um, so depth darkness, here's we'll have shaders to download, install. Oh, okay, I might have missed something then. I can't see what Tina is writing because of my computer. I want to
Um,
change something. Okay, yeah, that's smart. Yeah, you can always change someone else's presets and save it as basically a different preset. I'm dumb and leave my autosave on, and so I end up changing the original one. It's not always smart because then you have to go, if you want to fix it, you have to go and reinstall that. So don't do that. Don't be dumb like me. Actually change it differently. Um, so things like depth, darkness, and depth, you have to understand depth to be able to understand those. Depth is how where the focus is going to be in the picture. You in every picture you're going to have a background, a midground, and a foreground. And choosing the depth is going to tell you where which parts of the picture the camera is going to be focusing on and which is not going to be in focus. So to be able to do depth, we have a couple of different things. We have um, do I have it? Because I haven't touched anything in a hot minute. Well, I know it had the cinematic. Okay, depth. There we go. So we have cinematic depth of field, which is a good free option for um if you don't want to get Otis. This lets you manually set the focus or use autofocus on any of your pictures. So you can see here I haven't set it so everything's kind of blurry. If I want to autofocus it, it's automatically going to pick kind of what it thinks is the focus. If I don't want to do autofocus, I can unclick that and pick the plane. So you can see here if it'll let me. It's showing this has a feature that shows me what is out of focus by having that white um, mask on it. That's very useful to try to figure out where you're going to be putting your focus plane. Mine's apparently all messed up from the last time I did a fucking picture. I don't know where anything is anymore. Tells you how often I use this versus Otis. Um, Yeah, this is one that's good to play around with. Um, this one, like I will admit, is a lot of finagling to try to figure out where the focal length, the sweet spot for the focal length, the aperture, and the focus plane is. Usually I can get it right with just the focus plane, but it's being a pain in the ass today. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so you have to drag it. So you'll see this blue line is going to tell you where in the picture you're going to be focusing. The focal length is going to tell you how wide of a chunk you're going to be focusing on. And the aperture, typically in photography, would be talking about like light, but it can also talk about the angle that it's going to be focusing on too. So if I wanted to have it, you can see that it's blurred the back for me and anything in the foreground. Something to keep in mind is it will also blur any UI that you have. I think there's a way to fix it, but I don't mess around with this enough to care. But that is a really good option. Something to keep in mind is that it will not blur the hair like Otis Cam does. Otis is kind of the only one that really blurs the hair and gets rid of the crinkliness, unless you have a bunch of other mods to like smooth out the hair separately. Otis is going to be the one that smooths it out the best. Um, Another thing to keep in mind with the cinematic depth of field is you actually need to set the depth buffers up um, correctly in the game, and that does mean that making sure the uh, the settings are set correctly. At least on mine, you have to make sure that the depth buffer is clear before operations, and then you have to go into display depth to make sure that it is presented correctly. So that is something to keep in mind if you are going to be using the cinematic depth. So now that we know that what depth is, that is also what depth darkness and canvas fog are also going to rely on. So, that is the wrong one. Depth darkness. So I have mine pulled down because I use mine as like a blend. But if I'm pulling that all out to its highest strength, you can see that it blacks out the entire background. So this is going to, the way this one works is it focuses up until a certain point and then stops. It's not going to blur like the front, or it's not going to darken the foreground as well. It only does the background. So here I can pull the plane farther into the foreground or farther into the background to get it sitting exactly where I want. Um, I can also change the color, and then as you saw, very frequently change the blend factor if I don't want it completely black, but I just want to um, make sure the background is a little bit darker to bring the foreground a little bit brighter. Um, Canvas fog, like I said, works similarly. This one has a little bit more controls. I don't remember the last time played this, but it basically puts a gradient behind your character or wherever it lands in the background, much like depth darkness. But you can pick the colors and how strong it is and what kind of gradient it is. Um, so almost like you would be doing a mask, like a about depth or getting any of these depth shaders to work. I don't remember what I did with this one. Why it's not fitting the way I want. Oh no, you disconnected. Okay. Do you want me to wait till you can reconnect, Echo? Mm,
I'm back. I was only
Okay,
gone for
cool.
a few moments.
Echo, was there anything that you missed or you need me to recover?
The very, very end of the canvas fog, I think I missed.
I'm gonna take your silence as a
Oh,
no. Okay. Um, so those are the basic um non-Otis shaders. I will go over the add-on really quick because a lot of us use it. Um, Let me start. So to be able to use this, you do have to enable the I didn't fucking I didn't open I didn't open it at all. One sec. I thought I did. I did not. Okay. So for this, you open Otis, inject, move this out of the way now, and then start your camera. Start here. And then as soon as you have that going, you can now use the connector. Also, to be able to use the connector, you always have to have this particular shader enacted. I just always leave it on because it's easiest to use that way. So the way that Otis works is a bit different from the other ones. The other ones calculate the depth of field that you already have running on your game. This one calculates it by the way you set it and then actually renders all of the bokeh and blur uh, after you set it. So for this, you set how the match bokeh size is how basically how blurry you want it to be. The focus delta is going to be where you are focusing and where you want everything to be in focus. For me, I usually am going to be picking people's faces. If there's multiple people, I'll kind of try to pick a place that's in between them so they're all sort of in focus. So I picked her face. That means that everything in front of her face is going to be blurry, and everything behind her face is going to be blurry. Um, I usually don't mess with these too much, but you can definitely play around with how big and complicated you want the bouquet in the background to be, what they look like, what shape they are. I don't mess with it because I don't care that much, but it's definitely something you can play with, especially if you have something like um, a bunch of sparkles and stuff. You can figure out how you want that to look. So then I would just start rendering, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it renders for me, and then after it's done, I would take the screenshot. Um, any questions on the Otis depth of field or anything like that so far? Mm. Um, Trying to think of a couple of other ones. Like I said, most of these are going to be effects, um, tint, haze. These are all going to give minor like lighting and color effects. HDR is one that I don't use a lot, but it's really good if you want to have like lights that are um, basically made brighter. Um, and that's the best way I can describe it. Is I feel like it makes uh, lights brighter, and you can adjust it to uh, make it look a little bit more crisp and clean, if that makes any sense. I don't use this one much, but it's really good if you have like playing with like fire and lighting effects. That's a very fun one to play with. Um, Vignette is going to basically put a black mask over the edges. I prefer this one to trying to use something like GIMP. The one in GIMP is ugly. So doing this in Reshade is a lot easier, and you can see where it starts and where it ends and how much of an effect it's going to be. So it's good for making a very dramatic uh, kind of look. Um, but again, going down, you can see a lot of these are going to be color grading is something that you can affect the colors. Um, I think this one does an automatic. Yeah, so this is going to color grade for you, but you can go through and check all of the things like luminosity um, and how it fits. Um, LUT is another one that I like to use a lot if you were trying to get a good color theme for your pictures. Um, I have used this one in the past, the CineTools LUT. What it does is it actually has a file with colors, um, basically one color that it dithers into your picture. So if you're trying to make a picture look cohesive, um, that is going to be a really good effect to use. Um, I like using the Filmic Gold. It gives a very warm look to things. You can also pick how much of that it's going to add into your picture or how little. But you can also pick different colors like blue if you want something cooler. I remember the teal orange. It uses several colors. Um, it's good for making something feel cohesive, but something to keep in mind is that you it may also lose things that are popping in your picture as a result. So if you're trying to get something like a character to stand out, you may need to add more shaders uh, like the monocular cues and um, stuff and clarity to make things pop better so you don't lose your subject. Take that off. Yeah, the matte effect is really fun. Um, that is the beauty of a lot of these because they all do all slightly different effects. Um, you can really tweak a picture to look, um, you know, exactly the way you want it. Um, I'm gonna go over what I tend to use, depending on the picture. I tend to stick to a lot of the same ones. So if I were to be building this picture right now, I would go with monocular cues. Um, I'm gonna skip film grain because I hate looking at that. I would go with a bloom. The bloom is also going to make your lights, very um,
Lighty.
dreamlike, lighty. Your lights are going to be lighty. They're going to be very dreamlike. I love having that kind of dreamlike look, very soft, without blurring your entire picture. I am going to add clarity since I am going to be using Otis. Clarity is also good. It will also bring up the brightness just a little bit a lot of the time. I don't think I'm going to use depth darkness because I have lights in the background that I still want to see and I don't want it to cut in with that. So I'm going to leave that as is. I think I may bring up the bloom a little bit though. If it will let me. Thank you. A million fucking shaders. Okay. So Oh, that's right. I brought it down. I'm gonna bring that up just a little bit. And Also, another recommendation is that Raker put, uh, I think they're like organizers for this. Do as I say, not as I do. Organize it for yourself because I always lose things. I'm terrible about this. I'm gonna reset from my last photo, but I do think I want to bring the saturation up just a little bit because I like the colors that we're getting behind this. If I wanted to, I could bring up just the greens and reds and oranges to make this really pop. I don't feel like fucking with that right now though. So I'm gonna leave that as is. Okay. And then so from there, I would go to that and I would start my depth of field. Um, Something to note too, if you are hot sampling is going to be done in the, if you have Otis, um, that's going to be done here. Your workflow for that, um, you would set all of your effects, go into hot sampling, and pick the size that you use. If you're trying to get just a larger picture, like a 4K picture, my native resolution is 2K, so I don't hot sample very much. But if you're trying to get 4K, you would basically do like two times the. If you have a 2K, you would do two times what you have, or if you have less than 2K, you would basically do more. So this would make it much larger. I'm not going to hot sample today because hot sampling takes up a lot of processing power and it can actually ruin my audio if I try to do that. So I'm just going to go through that. You can also make different shapes um, with your hot sampling. I personally like using 4-5 a lot to have something that looks like a yeah. So if it will play across two monitors if you have two. It's basically faking a bigger monitor. So because you already have two monitors, your screen is going to take that. Okay, bye Mickey. Um, so this is also where free shot comes in. Because especially if you're using something that is not like a regular screen size, like the 4-5, it's going to help you see the whole picture because you're only, at least for me, if I do 4-5, I see like from here to here, but then there's going to be a bunch of picture that you don't see above your screen and a bunch of picture that you don't see below your screen. So that's where free shot is going to be really useful. Um, so yeah, I like doing 4-5. I feel like it looks kind of like a print size like that. So that's one of my favorites. So you would go and set your original shaders, hot sample, and then you would start your depth of field session. Something you can also do if you are planning to use the same ratio is start your depth of field session and make sure it's already focused and then cancel, then hot sample, and then go back in and then start your rendering because that means it will already be completely focused and you don't have to mess with it once it's already in hot sampling. So that's another option. So your workflow, shaders, hot sampling, and then rendering. And then from there, once it tells you that it is done rendering, you can take a screenshot. You are always going to want to end your depth of field session before you bring your hot sampling back to its original state. Any questions on hot sampling workflow that we have so far? Yeah, you'll get a black screen and freak out. It also raises the likelihood that it will get stuck. I recently had it get stuck and think that like there was a depth of field session going on when I didn't have one going on. It wouldn't go away. Like so, like I would load my game and the whole game would be black until I started Otis and started a hot sampling session. Or started a depth of field session, and I had to completely reinstall Reshade to get it to work.
Nancy's asking a question about what the rendering actually does specifically.
Yeah, so what the rendering is going to do is pixel by pixel, it is going to build the picture that you want. So it's taking two pictures of your screen. So when you see my depth of field, you can see how it blurred. If I move this focus delta, you can see how these two pictures overlap. So once I focus it to where I want that focus, everything else is still going to be blurred. So what it's doing is it's taking those pictures and it's rendering them together um, to create the blur that you want, and it's also building the bokeh. Bokeh is going to be basically like the circles that you see. Let me see if I can. So when something is out of focus, you will get these little circles where lights are in a picture. So the game is basically mimicking those, and it is rendering those little circles in every single little light speck that it sees um, in the picture. So that's why this particular one is is paid because it is a lot of work to program something like that. So I'll go ahead and let it render and see if I can spot. Sometimes I can spot the rendering going on as it goes. So so you can see it's taking 1,300 shots and building those up one by one to build these little bouquet. So you might be able to see it with you can usually see it with the lighting. You can see it kind of move as it renders it. Yeah, it's very cool tool. And I personally, again, I like it because you have so much control over how your in focus and out of focus is going to look. Yeah, you're also going to get a lot higher quality. Again, a lot of programming, which is why it is something that you have to pay for. And I get why. Like this is a programmer who's created a full program for us to be able to not only control the camera in the game, but hot sample and build this particular depth of field that is very high quality. So you can see as it finishes rendering, it's gone through 1,300 frames to build this shot. You can see how this is much more blurred now. I don't have a ton of bokeh in this because the only lights I have are these candles. Yeah, he has a bunch of my. I should have downloaded more when I still had my subscription. Um, but yeah, so you can see how it's rendered. All of the background is going to be blurred out. We have one of the things I like about this too is you really see with Otis, you see the bloom around the candles really, really well. Um, Also, a big difference between this particular depth of field and the cinematic one is you tend to get a little bit of a ring around the characters when you have the cinematic one that I just particularly don't like. It's not a big deal. I'm just picky about it. But yeah, that one. So that is Otis. From there, I just hit screenshot and you can see it has dumped my picture into my folder. So, any other questions on any other specific shaders or how they might work or anything else while we are here? Like I said, there's a ton. I don't mind going over specific ones, but you can see we will be here forever if I go try to go through all of these. But I really do encourage you to just play around with them, um, and see which ones you like.
Are there any
If you
specific
have
sorry.
no, go ahead.
Are there any specific ones that we should stay away from because they can break things or
Not that I know of. There's going to be a lot of ones that I don't feel like are going to be useful for our particular case. One of them is CRTs. You can pretty much always not touch because they just copy like an old school television. Those are just going to give an effect like that.
Okay.
There's so many CRT shaders for no goddamn reason. Um, so those you can ignore pretty much off the bat. um, but there's a tons of different kinds of blooms and lens flares that are really fun to play around with. Did I stop my? Okay, I did. Um, the bulge and pinch. Yeah, I haven't played around with that, but yeah, it can give a cool effect. Um, if you're trying to get something that's not like typical, if you want it to be more artistic. That one I believe is color uh, color isolation. So this one I haven't used this one a ton, but you can pick a target hue and it's going to isolate that particular color and shade out everything else. The color isolation is really good. Like you can see, it looks like it mostly picked up uh, the greens that were back here. If I can pick, um, I have a lot of reds in mine because of her skin and hair. But yeah, this is one that you definitely want to play around with, depending on like what kind you have going on. I haven't played with it a ton, but it is a fun one. Um, I think there's also a mask where you can put before and after for if you were trying to mask off like the depth for UI. Um, I believe you can set those up. But that is again something else you have to fiddle with to get it to work correctly. But very useful functionality. Um, tint is good if you want kind of a if you want to do more sepia tone stuff. I think I have played around with this one before. It's good if you're looking to get something more like an older picture. Put this one down. Put the strength up. And it's going to look different depending on what kind of colors you have. That is also something to consider in any picture. All of these are going to look different depending on what kind of colors you have inherently in your picture. Um, and may take more fiddling with to get it to look the way that you want. So, like, if I want to use more sepia, I can see that's going to bring, because it's uh, a derivation of God, I can't talk to a derivative of red, it's going to bring up a lot of those reds. Um, but if I wanted to, I could go through and bring down. Uh, that's the wrong one. I could bring down the temperature, but I could also do selective color and bring down certain reds and yellows if I want to balance it out. Um, so that's just something to keep in mind with these. A lot of it is going to, if you want a certain look, is going to be playing around with it, the colors to get them to vibe correctly, if that makes sense. But that's kind of just the basics of everything. Um, do y'all have anything else that you'd like me to go over? Any questions for any other specific ones? Otherwise, we can go ahead and leave it here so we're not here forever. Thanks. Sorry, I could not talk hardly at all today. I don't know why my throat hates me. Ugh.
I know I definitely learned a few things on a couple of shaders that I have not been touching.
Yeah, like I said, I know there's a ton. I would say if the best way to find things, that is gonna be through Lighty Lights. Uh, that is the oh god, what the hell is it called again? The Gobo. A lot of people use like the dot ones over their um over their light and pull up the scattering. Scattering is what's gonna make the light look fuzzy like that. And we can always do like a lighty lights one in the future too. I've done kind of
Yeah.
the basics before, so I'm happy to do that again for anyone who needs help with it. Something to keep in mind, I know a lot of this stuff. I am not an expert. Obviously, I'm
I
not
was
Raker.
I I was gonna say
So there's
I could see about if we want to have a basics intro to Lighty Lights event, if you wanted to run that, and then see if I can get
yeah,
Ali or Raker in here to maybe
yeah.
run a more in depth to like how the visual effects work. 'Cause I don't know
Does
about you.
Raker does Raker do any talking on any voice chat?
Nope.
Uh, because the last time, so I've done like a VP boot camp before for the modding community server, and him and
They'll
Daniela
join.
joined.
They'll
They
join and then they
joined.
yell in text.
No, he didn't say anything except when I asked if anyone had questions, he answered no every time. I was like, I can hope you don't have any questions about your own mod.
Aliona might be one to be give a more in depth because I know that she's done a lot of the visual effects write ups
Yeah,
for Lighty Lights. I think if
yeah,
you would be down to give the basics, because I think those would probably be two separate events. They would both be
yeah.
relatively in depth. One for the installation and setup of basic Lighty Lights, and then one for the
hmm
visual effects and how to pull them and how they work.
Yeah, I think we also need like a whole separate like one for Bone Zone too,
Oh
because
my
that's
goodness.
a beast in itself.
Yeah, yeah. And then I'm also thinking about doing one for Blender basics as well because I know I've gotten a few people reaching out, and I've done some individual sit downs, but um, yeah, Bone
Yeah,
Zone, Bone Zone,
I could.
Blender, Lighty Lights.
Yeah, I if Eliana is willing to do like the ANL, I think
Hmm.
she has a better grasp over it. I know how to use it, but for some reason it's been real persnickety with me lately. I
It
don't know if it's my
has.
PC
It's broken my
or
save a couple of times, and I've like had to roll back or like completely shut down my PC on occasion.
so I haven't had that much of a problem. I also have a million fucking saves.
Yeah.
And I can easily duplicate a save and have that just for that particular picture and delete it afterwards.
Yeah.
That's how I do all of my VP. I do not do anything while I am actually physically playing a game. Um, all of this is done completely separately. Um, but we play the game occasionally,
Only in
and
multiplayer
few and far.
anymore. My solo plays have stopped.
I don't do multiplayer.
Uh,
I did multiplayer with my spouse once. We made it through a single session,
mm,
um, because I had pulled my mods down to 10 for
mm,
them, so that we didn't have to
that would
coordinate
be a
that.
struggle, bringing
Yeah,
it
and then
down
I
to
went
10.
I went back to my 200 my 200 fucking
Mhm.
list of mods afterwards because I had pictures to take.
Um, okay, if there are no further questions on this, I'm going to close the recording, and people are more than welcome to request to hop on stage, and we can just make it a chat. People can sit in here and talk and go over some things if you want. But thank you everybody for joining, and thank you, Miss Rent, for
Yeah.
hosting this for us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for helping me set all of this up. I
Yeah.
am terrible at setting up the the events myself, so I appreciate the help.
Yeah. I love doing events. They help me learn a bunch, even just having to
Yes.
like find what I need to help people learn. It helps me learn in so doing. So,
Also, before I forget, this is the link for the Otis and Reshade installation that I used before anything else was available, before we had any of the groups that we have. This is a great tutorial if you need to go over it again. It is very in depth for Reshade install and using Otis Cam. Yeah, the Stone Age. Believe me, before I joined modding community, there was nobody to ask about this. And besides this tutorial, the only information was on uh Franz's website, and trying to go through that documentation had me pulling my fucking hair out. I had a, I almost had a meltdown just trying to get through it. So having anything nowadays is we have so much information and so many people doing this now. It's like night and day. But that one is still definitely incredibly useful for anybody who's learning to do all this stuff. Very good primer. But yeah, we'll definitely go over more tools in the future. I think if we can get feedback on what kind of events that y'all would like, that would help us be able to set it up in the future.
yes, I agree with that 100%. Please just let us know what you're wanting, and we will make sure that they get set up. If I need to reach out to people, if Miss Wren and I don't have the knowledge, I'll reach out to people and get uh, people who do have the knowledge. And then whatever we are capable of with people here in the server, we'll see. We'll get events set up and find hosts for them and have fun and learn.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna call it here because I've had apparently medication sitting out on the porch for like the last hour
Ooh,
now. So I
yes.
have to
Okay,
go pick that up.
you go. You go. Thank you again, Miss Wren.
Yeah, of course. You guys have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye bye.